channel, I'm Alexa. Today we're making Dubai chocolate cake. I measured out all my ingredients and I recommend that you do so too. You can find a full list of ingredients and measurements in the link in the description. Remember to watch the video first so you can be prepared. To start, I'm going to sift my flour, cocoa powder, baking powder, and baking soda in the bowl of my stand mixer. This is to make sure there are no clumps. If you don't have a sifter, you can use a wire whisk or a fork. When you're sifting, you can push the ingredients through using a rubber spatula or a spoon, or you can tap the sides of it with your hands. Now that my ingredients have all fallen through, I'm going to tap the sides of my sifter so I can make sure no ingredients are stuck to its stand. If your sifter doesn't have a stand, you don't need to do this step. Then I'm going to add in my sugar. I'm going to stir that to combine it. Next, I'm going to add in the milk, the oil, and the egg. Before I add in the egg, I'm going to quickly scramble it with a fork, which will allow it to mix in better with my other ingredients. I'm scraping down the bowls my ingredients are in with a rubber spatula so all of them enter my bowl as much as possible. I'm going to mix this until my ingredients are combined. Some of my dry ingredients are sticking to the sides of my bowl, so I'm going to scrape them off of there with my rubber spatula. Make sure to scrape down the bottom of your bowl as well. Then, after I turn back on the mixer, I'm going to slowly pour in the coffee. It's important that the mixer is on while this happens so the hot coffee doesn't cook the eggs. I'm going to scrape down my bowl again to make sure everything's mixing well. I'm going to put my mixer on a little longer to make sure everything's mixing well. It looks great, so let's move on to the next step. Next, I'm going to cut my parchment paper into a circle. In order to do this, I'm going to start by folding it in half and then folding it in half again until it looks like this. In the corner that is fully folded, I'm going to fold twice more, much like you do when making a paper snowflake. Then I'm going to use a ruler to measure out half of the pan, the radius, which in this case is 4.5 inches because my pan is 9 inches wide. Then I'm going to make a little cut on both sides at the 4 3/4 inch mark because I recommend doing it a little bigger than your exact measurement so it goes up the sides of the pan a little bit. Then I'm going to connect the two cuts in a curve. That will give you a circle that is perfect size for your cake. Now I'm going to pour the batter into the pan. I'm using my rubber spatula to guide the batter into the pan. Since the batter is thin, it'll fill the pan evenly automatically so you don't need to worry about it coming out tilted. Now I'm going to put my cake into the oven. My oven's preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. My cake took 21 minutes to bake. When it's done, if you stick a cake tester, toothpick, or knife into it, it'll come out clean. Place it onto a cooling rack to cool for about 30 minutes. Next, I'm going to make the toasted kataifi. To do that, I'm going to put my kataifi into my melted butter on medium heat on the stove. Then I'm going to stir it using my rubber spatula consistently to make sure it doesn't burn. We just want it to be a little browned. It doesn't need to be completely even or perfect as long as it isn't burnt because then it won't taste good. After it's done, let it sit so it cools. Now I'm going to make my chocolate ganache. To do that, I put my chocolate chips into a heat-safe bowl, which I put on a trivet so it doesn't cool off too quickly, resting on the cold countertop. Then I'm going to pour in my heavy cream, which I heated in the microwave in a microwave-safe container, just until hot. Don't overheat your cream. Start in small increments of 30 seconds. Each microwave is different, so I can't give you an exact amount of time, but it shouldn't take too long. Most likely it should be about a minute total. You just want it warm enough to melt your chocolate. You can also heat it in a small pot over the stove. After this sits, I'm going to whisk this until all of it is mixed together and looks the same. I'm going to let this sit for an hour so it can thicken slightly before I put it onto the cake. After it's been out of the oven for 30 minutes, I'm going to remove my cake from the cake pan. To do this, I'm using a rubber spatula between the cake and the pan to try to make sure the cake doesn't stick anywhere. I'm undoing the springform part of the pan, and then I'm using a cake lifter to lift it off of the bottom part. Place it onto your cooling rack, so in particular the bottom of the cake can cool further. While that happens, I'm going to mix my pistachio cream with my toasted kataifi. To do this, I'm using my rubber spatula to remove my pistachio cream from my measuring cup, and then I'm going to use my spatula to gently fold the cream into the kataifi. Folding ingredients means you can carefully mix your ingredients by using a spatula to bring your ingredients from the bottom of your bowl and put them on top of the ingredient you're trying to fold in. This will help the kataifi pieces remain more intact. I'm going to do this until the kataifi and the pistachio cream are fully mixed together. Now I'm going to assemble the cake. To do this, I'm going to put my cake back into the springform pan and then close it like before. This will help us to get everything in even layers. Next, I'm going to use my rubber spatula to guide the kataifi layer on top of the cake. Then I'm going to smooth it delicately into an even layer so every slice gets the same amount of kataifi. I'm smoothing it out using my offset cake spatula because that will make it easier to smooth out. Just be patient. It takes a little time, but it'll gradually spread easier as you can see. Then I'm going to pour the ganache on top of the kataifi layer using my rubber spatula to guide it onto the cake. Then I'm going to smooth it out using my offset cake spatula because that will make it look smoother. I'm going to put this into my fridge for an hour so it can chill. After the cake has chilled, I'm going to take the cake out of the pan. To do that, I'm using a small offset cake spatula to go around the edges of the cake delicately to separate it from the pan. After I do that, I'm going to undo the springform part of the pan. Next, I'm going to drizzle some pistachio cream over the top of the cake to make it look like a Dubai chocolate candy bar. This step isn't necessary, but I think it makes it look nice. To do that, I softened 1 tablespoon of pistachio cream with 1¼ teaspoons of milk for 10 seconds in the microwave. This will make it thinner, which will make it easier to drizzle. I used a fork to drizzle it abstractly. Do this until you're satisfied by how it looks. And my Dubai chocolate cake is done and looking delicious. Please let me know what you thought of the video in the comments and how the recipe went for you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you can see when new videos are added. Thank you and enjoy.